Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. I am your host, Marcus Mosier. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosier. And joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. You can also listen to him on the Best Coast Boys podcast. Landon, what is going on, sir?
Not much. We are all in election day watching, but we're trying to find a distraction. And guess what? We have arrived for you guys to give you a distraction. The bad news is that it's not going to be a very fun distraction for the Cowboys this week.
Yeah, you thought the election was a dumpster fire. You just wait till Sunday afternoon when the Cowboys are on. Landon, let's go ahead and start with this. As of this recording, we have no idea who's going to be starting at quarterback for the Cowboys. It could be either one of two names, Cooper Rush or Garrett Gilbert. Let's start with this. Who do you want to see on Sunday against one of the top defenses in the NFL and the Pittsburgh Steelers?
I want to see Dak Prescott, but I don't think that's correct. I don't think he's an option this week, from what I understand. I guess I really feel like I've been haggling with myself back and forth on this, and I think that I kind of come down with Cooper Rush simply because I feel like he has a level of experience in this offense. Even though it's a year or two removed, he still knows how it's supposed to be run and has a familiarity with Kellen Moore, and I think that is a valuable thing. I don't know how valuable. I mean, I don't know that he's a very talented quarterback necessarily, or that he's up to the challenge by any stretch of the imagination. But I don't think that that's the bar that we're holding these guys to. I think for me, I want to see somebody who can go out there and execute plays. I mean, just get out of the way of the rest of the offense. I mean, I think that and quarterback's a hard position for that to happen at. It's obviously the person distributing the ball, so you need them to be at a certain level in order for your offense to perform at a high level. And I think statistics have bear that out. So whoever it is being thrown to the wolves in the worst sense of the way. And I was on the Locked On Steelers podcast this week, and I told them that frankly, this is one of the biggest mismatches I think you'll see maybe in the NFL. I mean, I think the Cowboys are playing currently like maybe the worst team in football, and the Steelers right now are playing like probably the best team in football.
Yeah, it's going to be rough. And when you factor in the Cowboys offensive line, one of the strengths of the Steelers team, and let's go ahead and talk about the Cowboys offense. It's the Pittsburgh edge rushers, right? TJ Watt and Bud Dupree, that are both having fantastic seasons. Just so happens to be that the Cowboys offensive tackles here, Cam Irving and Terrence Steele, might be two of the 5 worst in the NFL. So it's just a terrible matchup. Lane, I'm going to ask you this. How can the Cowboys offense have any success in this game? I mean, we know they're not going to get to 26 points, 27 points, but how can they get to 17 or 20 to give themselves a chance?
Well, I mean, I know no one wants to hear this because this is certainly not the recipe for success for the Cowboys when Dak's on the field. But I really, really do believe that they got to find a way to run the football effectively. I mean, just because they need to protect whoever's playing quarterback. And I think that having a balanced offense will at least allow you some option to keep personnel on the field so that when you do throw the football, you're going to have extra blockers. So maybe a couple extra tight ends, a couple extra, a tight end here and there. Maybe not as much 11 personnel. Maybe you're trying to keep in an extra guy to protect if you do throw the ball, because it's not just T.J. Watt but Dupree. I mean, Stephen Tuitt and Hayward and Tyson Alualu, I mean, has found a career resurgence in a second act, if you will,
sure,
in Pittsburgh. And I think all of those guys are very effective, whether it's passing or running. I think that they all have a high level of efficiency. So I think the Cowboys, they need to find a way to get a win or two up front. And I don't know if there's, it's such a bad mismatch for the Cowboys at this particular spot. I don't know the best way to attack it, but I think they need to find something, some play scheme that will work for them, and then just keep hitting it, because look, I mean, I and this is what I said on the Locked On Steelers show. It's such a mismatch, unfortunately, for the Cowboys that, I don't know that they have a lot of options to kind of to do a lot of different stuff, to kind of ask, hey, what do we do? What should we do? I think, again, it's one of those things where what's functioning? What play can you run without it being blown up or there being a miscue? At this point, the Cowboys need to just string together functioning plays and then, just hold on and hope for the best of the outcome. I don't think there's a lot of great ways for any team. I mean, not any team, but most teams in the NFL to attack the Steelers defense. I think that bore itself out last week against Baltimore, who has, one of the best teams in football and one of the more interesting and unique offenses that can do a wide variety of things. And they really struggled, I think, to kind of get a whole bunch of traction. So how are the Cowboys, who are down to two, if not three tackles and down two quarterbacks, supposed to, make hay against these guys? However they can possibly. That's the answer, is wherever they can find an advantage. I think they have to find a way to stay balanced, simply because they have to keep the defense guessing and they have to protect their quarterback. And I think running the football is something that the offensive line feels more comfortable for. And maybe the one thing that you have that's an advantage at all, outside of having three good wide receivers and some good tight ends too, I think we should throw in, is you have an interior three that is really kind of congealing and is forming together. And if they aren't going to kick Zach Martin outside to tackle, then maybe you lean on the run prowess of that interior three, moving people off the ball.
So as somebody who's watched a lot of Steeler games over the last, 20 or 30 years, I have a pretty good idea of how you can beat this Steelers team. And actually, the teams that have had the most success against Pittsburgh as of late are the teams that spread them out, use 3, 4, 5 receiver sets, and make it so they have to tell what they're doing early with their blitzes, because that's how Pittsburgh wins, right? They create pressure by bringing more guys that you can block. They scheme it up really well. So if you can spread them out, you can actually have a lot of success against the secondary. Pittsburgh is allowing the most yards per completion in the NFL this season. If you can kind of find out pre-snap where these guys are coming, it helps. However, the Cowboys don't have the offensive line or the quarterback to do that right now, right? I think if they were fully healthy, they match up really well with the Steelers defense. They really do.
Or maybe if they had one or the other, right? Like maybe if they had
Dak,
if
they had Dak and a bad offensive line, I still think they would have spread the ball out, spread the offense out, try to get rid of the ball quick. Their only hope here is to do a little bit of what Baltimore did last week, and that is a lot of misdirection, a lot of things going in different directions just to keep the defensive linemen off balance. We saw good guys like Stephon Tuitt and Cam Hayward get confused last week. Baltimore's interior offensive line isn't great. It's really not that much better than Dallas's, if at all. And they had some success because they kept that defense on their heels. So if Kellen Moore can use a lot of bootleg, a lot of play action, a lot of jet sweeps and misdirections just to keep them off balance, then maybe, just maybe, they would have some success in the rushing game. I also think this is a good week for Tony Pollard because you're going to need that speed. Pittsburgh thrives against defense or against rushing attacks that just try to run right up the middle. It's where they're at their best. Trying to run to the edges might be the strategy here. Landon, if I set the over-under on, let's say, 12 points for the Cowboys offense in this game, what would you say?
I'd probably take the under. I mean,
and that's not bad, honest, right?
I mean, look, this was an offense that was dysfunctional before Dak left. And now since Dak has left, we've also lost another offensive tackle. We've lost obviously another quarterback. So they couldn't even muster up that much against Philadelphia, and this is a much better team than Philadelphia. So I have a hard time believing that this offense is going to produce. The 2 touchdowns would be fantastic.
Yeah, and I don't. Whoever starts a quarterback, it's not like it's been somebody who's been here the whole season long because they signed Cooper Rush just a week ago. Garrett Gilbert was just a few weeks before that. So whoever they throw out there, the playbook is going to be limited. There's certain plays that you're just not going to be able to run. Their arm talent is not the same as Dak or even Andy Dalton, so it's gonna be a problem.
Even if they were real quick, even if they were smart, like a little bit like a more Kellen Moore type quarterback, that would be helpful, right? Because then they could diagnose the Pittsburgh blitz a little bit better. These guys are mostly just young, unexperienced quarterbacks who don't have a lot of time in the NFL and aren't super talented. No offense to them to begin with, and they're being thrown to the wolves basically with very little protection, unfortunately.
And now we transition over from the Cowboys' bad offense to their somehow worse defense, going up against the Steelers' offense that has scored at least 26 points in every game this season. See how I know these stats right off the top of my head? It's not like I watch all these Steeler games or anything.
No, it's not like you're a secret Steelers fan or anything.
Stop it. All right, let's talk about this Cowboys defense, because believe it or not, there were some signs of improvement from this Cowboys defense, last week. I mean, and even they weren't absolutely awful against Washington 2 weeks ago. How do you think this Cowboys defense matches up against this Pittsburgh offense?
The problem is that they are starting to get a little bit healthier, but they're about to face an offensive onslaught with these guys. Ben Roethlisberger, and again, as well as I do, probably better. Ben Roethlisberger has come back from his offseason injuries last year in pretty fine form, and Pittsburgh has once again, no surprise, found themselves in a fantastic young rookie wide receiver who could step in and add to what was already a trio, and now is a quadro, or whatever that would be, a quadrant, a quad.
Four.
Sure, 4. Let's go with that. And then on top of that, they also have some decent tight ends as well. So Eric Ebron's had a nice little season so far this year. So I think that the issue is for the Cowboys, they've had problems stopping one-dimensional offenses, and I think that it's like I told them on the Steelers show, the Cowboys have not stopped any team that has tried to run on them. They haven't stopped them. They've done a good job of kind of slowing the bleeding at times. I think last week, especially, they were being gashed early on, and I think they got it down to 5 yards a carry. But 5 yards a carry is not a good number to be giving up. So
no, not at all.
I think for the Cowboys, they have to find a way to trap the Steelers into making this a passing game, and then forcing incompletions. Trying to get the Steelers to play towards what the Cowboys at least perceive they can do best, and that's rush the passer, maybe cover. Because I just don't think. Look, the defensive tackle, and that's laughable because they're terrible at those things. They're not terrible at pass rushing, but they're not great in coverage. But as bad as they are in pass coverage, and as bad as they can be at times, depending on how Alden Smith or Lawrence is playing at any given game at pass rush, they are so awful at stopping the run that anything that takes a team away from running the football, I think it's helping the Cowboys at least play to the few advantages that they might be able to find on defense.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you some spots where I think the Cowboys could have some success, and I want to start at the edge, right? Because Demarcus Lawrence has been one of the best defensive ends in football. He's going to be going up Chuck Okorafor, a third-year offensive tackle who has been really up and down this year. I think that's a big advantage for the Cowboys. Yep. And then on the other side, with Alden Smith and Randy Gregory, those guys present they're two different types of rushers, but I think both of them can have some success against Alejandro Villanueva, who's really been pretty rough this season as well. Now, the thing with the Steelers lately is Ben Roethlisberger has been getting rid of the ball extremely quick, did not take any sacks. One of the things that we're not seeing from him is him throwing the ball down the middle of the field at all. I'm not sure if he doesn't quite trust his arm strength or the velocity yet. It's just something he hasn't done. So if the Cowboys can blitz him and get pressure up the middle, they're going to have to do it via blitz because it's not coming from those interior guys. If they can pressure him, He will take sacks and he will throw the ball up for grabs. He's got some really good receivers, but all three of them, between Chase Claypool, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Deontay Johnson, have been very inconsistent all season long. So there are going to be chances for turnovers and getting off the field on third down, provided that they can stop the rushing attack. But there are a few spots where the Cowboys have advantages. Those guys, especially Demarcus Lawrence, Alden Smith, and Randy Gregory, are going to have to win their individual matchups. I want to talk about the cornerbacks, though, Landon. Trevon Diggs, I think, had the best game of his career against Philadelphia last week. Sounds like we may get Chidobe Awuzie back in this game, potentially. Anthony Brown is still a viable slot corner. How much do you trust their secondary if Awuzie comes back against these three really dynamic receivers?
Well, I mean, I think that, the key is going to be, and you said it, I think one of the key things that has been huge for Roethlisberger's, I mean, you don't want to call it comeback because he was just hurt for 1 year, but I mean, I think there were a lot of concerns about how he was going to come back this year. And I think a lot of the reason of his success is what you mentioned, him getting rid of the ball early. So I think for the Cowboys corners and basically anybody who's covering anybody, it's going to be really important that you win early. And that you're trying to buy some time on the back end for Randy Gregory, Alden Smith, Demarcus Lawrence, and I think you brought up a really good point too. Leighton Vander Esch and Jalen Smith. I mean, one of the few things that Jalen Smith has consistently done throughout his career is be a very good blitzer from the interior. So
and they're going to need him in this game.
They should use him because, and again, the one good thing about Ben Roethlisberger is that this is a kind of quarterback foe that they are familiar with. I mean, not so much Ben himself, but he's very Carson Wentz and him have a very similar game traditionally. And now the difference has been, like you said, this year specifically, Carson, I call him Carson. Ben's done a much better job of getting rid of the ball early. So if the Cowboys can slow that down somehow, if they can figure out a way, whether it's through coverage or just better press play, whatever it is, if the Cowboys can figure out a way to make Ben hold on to the ball just a tick longer, the pass rush again is one thing where the Cowboys can find advantages on defense that they probably aren't going to be able to find those margins in any other aspect on defense.
I think if the Cowboys are going to win this game, it's going to have to be because of their defense. Their defense is going to have to force 2 or 3 turnovers like we saw last week. They're going to have to give the offense short fields. I think the special teams are going to have to play a big part in this. But that defense, they can't allow this game to get to a shootout or where Pittsburgh jumps up 10-0, 14-0, because the offense just doesn't have the firepower to keep up. If they can hang around in this game, similar to what we saw against Philadelphia last week, where it's a 1-score game entering the fourth quarter, give yourself a chance. It's going to be a really tough task for a defense that has struggled so much this year, but we will see if they are up to the challenge. All right, Landon, let's do our predictions here for Week 9. Our favorite part of the show. I think we've been pretty good the last couple of weeks. We've been. I don't remember our records, but I'm pretty sure we've got it just about every week correct. Who do you see winning this game and why?
I mean, it's not hard. It's when this team's so bad. It's like it's
really hard.
Not. I mean, I'm picking the Steelers. I hate to be like this, but we're talking about election coverage. The paths to victory for the Cowboys are very few. It's the counts are coming in, and it's all Pittsburgh. It's all the Pittsburgh mail-in votes. They're all coming in, and it's just going to pile on. So I think for the Cowboys, it's a lot of what we just discussed. The way that they're going to win is, and this is such a flip on what they were built to do. This defense was built to be carried by this offense, and for the fact that so now for the fact that we're relying on the other thing, it's the
scary.
other way around. It's beyond scary. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous to hope. So I guess that's where we're at, is that the one way the Cowboys could do this, they play out of their minds defensively. They cause turnovers, maybe even a touchdown on defense. And the offense is able to play a good enough game of keep away, and then while generating some points that they're able to find a way to be close in the fourth quarter and then, see how it works out. I don't think any of that's going to happen. No. I mean, to be honest.
No.
I think Pittsburgh's going to score early, and then it's going to be ugly by halftime, and it maybe they'll take the foot off the gas, maybe they won't. I hate saying all of this, but I predicted on the Locked On Steelers that the score would be something in the area of 35-10, if I remember correctly. It's just, again, it's hard not to say it any other way, just because if you're looking at the trends of where these teams are in their season right now, the arrow's pointing way up on the Steelers, and they're at the very top right now, and the arrow is pointed way down on the Cowboys, and they're near the bottom. And I don't really know how to paint any clearer picture than that.
Yeah, I don't see this game being particularly close. Maybe Pittsburgh has a tendency to come out really flat against bad teams. We've seen it in the past. We've actually seen them lose games like this before. I just don't see any way that the Cowboys offense can put enough pressure on the Steelers to even really keep this game all that close. I'm looking at like a 34-6 game. I could see the Cowboys offense just completely laying an egg in this one, considering all the new faces on the offensive line, the new quarterbacks, and then going up against that pass rush. I think it's going to be a really, really long day. The Cowboys have a Week 10 bye, and they really need it, if nothing else, just to reset and get some of these players back and maybe just try to play better football, in the rest of November and December. We know they're not going to make the playoffs, but they need to put some better tape out there. I think after a Week 10 bye, we may see that. That is it for today's show. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, make sure you download and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow the show at Locked On Cowboys. You can follow Landon at McCoolBCB, and I'm at Marcus_Mosher. And we will see you next time. Enjoy Week 9.